And Shana, can you take a moment and just make sure you're able to share your screen and your presentation is working well for you? I can stop sharing.
Okay, let me try that again. I tried to do it when you were still sharing. So now are you able to see it?
Yes, it's great.
Okay, awesome. Should I stop that now?
That's fine. Yeah, I just want to make sure Deb is able to share as well. And people do trickle in on these things, so I probably will get started right after Deb's able to make sure she's able to share screen. Great. Looks great, Deb. Thank you. I will go back to sharing. Okay.
Chris, were you seeing my notes too? The notes thing, or was it just
Only the good ones. No, no notes.
I didn't have any notes, but they're all up here.
Nope, just the full slideshow view. Great. And I'll let you know if that changes. Great. Well, welcome everybody. I do expect others to start trickling in. I do want to get started relatively on time here, a little bit after 1 o'clock. Welcome to the December Salsa Society seminar. Our theme today is resilience and sustainability, social sustainability specifically. We have two great speakers today. Talking on social sustainability in agriculture will be Heleba, and talking on collaborative and resiliency-oriented practices among teachers will be Shana Haines, covering both their work and the work of a colleague, Jessica Strolin-Goltzman. So to get started, I do want to just give a little bit of background on Salsa Society. This is, I think we're just wrapping up our second full year of these. These are monthly seminars where we collect around a theme and have two speakers talk about their work under with a topic of their choosing that fits within that theme. We do that for 2 months in a row, and then quarterly we have an out-of-the-box brainstorming session where it's breakout groups focused on some emerging topics out of those seminars or topics they've been wanting to get together with a group and talk about and maybe cook up a plan and maybe even a project proposal or two as a result. And the point is to really promote connection and collaboration, cross-pollination, and problem solving with a larger group of transdisciplinary team members, and to just weave a stronger network within CALS, and I'm excited to say increasingly beyond CALS with other colleges across the university, and ultimately with the community that we work with and serve. Again, we do this with this sort of cadence of monthly seminars, one theme, two topics, and then a quarterly brainstorming session. And you can keep track of what's been happening with Salsa Society. All of the seminars are recorded and shared on our YouTube channel, and you can find those at go.uvm.edu/cells2 society seminar. This is our last scheduled seminar for the year, and we are actually taking an intentional pause in January and probably February of 2024 to regroup a little bit. I think we're going to be able to expand our organizing team to include partners beyond CALS and head into 2024 with new energy and great ideas for expanding the seminar series. So with that, and a reminder that you can always find us at our website and on our YouTube channel. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Deb Heleba to speak to the first topic. And Deb, if you don't mind, feel free to introduce yourself any way you would like to and introduce your topic. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. So my name is Deb Heleba. I use she, her pronouns, and I coordinate UVM Extension's community horticulture programs. But today I'm going to be talking about social sustainability on the farm, which was a project that I conducted about 10 years ago. So it's a little bit of like reflecting back on some past activities, but it was a unique project focused on resilience. So we thought that it would be interesting to talk about. So before we get started, let's just set the stage by giving a definition about what we mean by resilience. We see this word everywhere today. I think I counted 18 emails with the word resilience in the last week. But for the purposes of our work, we define social resilience as the ability of individuals to cope and thrive through challenges, right? And I just threw up some a pretty word cloud. We had a conference this weekend with our gardeners who brainstormed what resilience means to them. So I thought that was relevant to today. And also we had a registered horticulture therapist give a talk, and he provided these additional definitions based on the literature. So when I think about the project that I coordinated, I kind of think of this concept of trim tab programming. And I don't know if folks are familiar with Buckminster Fuller and the trim tab principle. It's sort of like an engineering thing, right, Chris? But really what there's actually a physical trim tab to maneuvering large vessels like a ship or a plane. And because the ships are so big, the rudder, in order to change the rudder to change course, you really need this very teeny little piece of equipment called a trim tab that creates the vacuum or whatever the engineering lingo, mechanical apparatus that's happening to make the big ship turn, right? So in order to make these downstream influences, what we need are just small actions to help us move in a new direction. So I thought that would be a nice metaphor for us to think about today. So the background of the project that I coordinated, it was through the Vermont State SARE program. SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture, Research and Education. This is a national competitive grants program. The Northeast region is located here at UVM. In addition to the competitive grants, there's state programs at every land-grant university across the country with the charged to deliver sustainable agriculture professional development to extension educators and other ag service providers based on local needs to improve programming for farmers. As I mentioned, I did conduct this program, Social Sustainability on the Farm, from 2014 to 2016. So it was a little while ago. But it was again a unique project, so we thought we could cover this today. So the spark of the project was this article from Horde's Dairyman, which is an industry publication for dairy farmers. I actually got this in the mail from one of a dairy farmer that I had been working with on how's your quality of life. And it described the research of a PhD student in Quebec who was looking at indicators to measure sustainability at the farm level. So I went ahead and tracked Valerie down and found her faculty advisor, Dr. Dion Perron at Laval University, and she was able to give a webinar for our group on how they were evaluating social sustainability in the farm. So those were the first inklings of this percolation of this project. So we were able to get some money from Northeast SARE to implement this project. Again, it was a professional development project aimed at offering training for extension educators and other folks that work with farmers to really just raise the awareness of social issues that farmers face and then start to address those. And so sort of the purpose of why we should care. Extension has long had in its mission improving quality of life, but sometimes that term, quality of life, what does that mean? And how do we influence quality of life through our extension programming? So we really wanted to explore, what is meant by quality of life? How can we address it? Are there measurable outcomes related to social sustainability? And really the broader impacts are were to strengthen overall viability of farms, foster the resiliency of our farm families, and really help bolster our rural communities. This is our team. We had 3 folks from Extension, myself, Lisa Chase, and Beth Holtzman. I put a star next to Dr. Jason Parker. He's an agriculture anthropologist that was embedded in the Department of Plant and Soil Science. And then we also had rural sociologist Shana Inwood, who was over in CDAE, and her graduate student Florence Bico. And then I also threw in Dr. Heather Darby. She was my faculty. I'm a staff, and she was my faculty advisor at the time. And really, for staff, it's really difficult to do these sort of innovative projects on her own. So she really gave me the space to be able to do this project. So the first order of business was to define, we like to define things, right? So it was to define social sustainability. And through Jason's work, he did a lot of diving into the literature to inform our project. So we came up with this definition of social sustainability, which is the persistence of a household social structures that over time support long-term stability of farmers and community to enable social resilience. And I just threw in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs just because I thought it was pretty and relevant. And through our project, we identified 5 themes that help us with social sustainability. And I'll just go through those very quickly because I know we're already short on time. Okay, first, community connections. And here we're really talking about social integration. Really, this is the core of what makes us human and make us social beings. So in the context of this project, we were talking about relationships, both within the family, with neighbors, and with greater community, so community involvement. Farm succession, the ability to transfer assets, land, machinery, and knowledge and skills from one generation to the next, whether folks are related or not. So I'll just move on. Health and well-being, so important. Farmers are at high risk for suicide even today. And as you can guess, agriculture is a very dangerous, physically dangerous profession. So really important to keep health and well-being in mind. So here we're talking about balance of work and family, access to health care, and also personal satisfaction. We get into some mental health issues here as well, not only physical. Of course, equity is also very important. And here we're talking about social justice as well as access to land and money and technical services to support farmers. And then finally, we added entrepreneurship to one of our themes. And that's really what we were talking about, is sort of the vision of the farm, being innovative, and really the ability to adapt to a changing environment, which is super important in today's society with climate change. So here's what we did in the project. First, as I mentioned, Jason conducted a literature review, and you can find the bibliography that he came up with here to really inform what the literature says about social sustainability. Then we hopped on farms and went to visit with farmers. And here I wanted to mention that we were able to flip. Usually when Extension and other folks go out to the farm, they're coming with an educator or the expert role, but when we came out to farm, it was the farmers who were the experts, right? And the educators. So we spent a lot of time listening and not talking. We did some webinars and classroom training. We were able to test the waters through some fun activities around health and well-being. You know, the poster presentations at professional conferences. And yeah, and one thing I got to do was do an expert review of triple bottom line standards for a national ag product business. My first NDA, that was fun. Okay, so I just wanted to throw up some pictures just to show you where we went. This is our group, small groups at first. Extension faculty and staff are a pretty small group, and so I think small groups were really lent itself well to this program. Here we are on a dairy farm. Again, we are learning from farmers like Scott, who's pictured on the right. This is his dairy. Really focused on relationship building and learning about what folks like Amy on the right were up to. She's sharing a future of her farm, her kids. We got to learn a little bit about equity, being a Black farmer, a Black dairy farmer in Vermont from Earl. I think was the only Black organic dairy farmer that I know. There's his cow. We got to learn about connection to communities from folks like Will and Kate over at Cedar Circle Farm. Actually have a dedicated train stop at their farm, which is so cool. And just learning about, you know, how they connect with community through some food service provision. And then agritourism and how agritourism connects to the community. This is Bill at Cloudland Farm, where we actually had a wonderful meal based on his beef farm. We were also able to leverage other professional development events. This is a national farm viability conference that happened in Vermont. This is at Grandstrom's Lilac Peak Vineyard. We're hearing about social sustainability from Sarah, and she's talking about farm succession and connection to community. Work and family balance from Jennifer and Spencer at Elmer Farm. And Jennifer was really influential in talking about being a mom and how to balance being a mom and being a farmer through her work in NOFA. So she's an expert. Talking about farm succession with the Skoltons, a dairy farm. And then also hearing from other professionals like Sam Smith at the Intervale Center, where he's actively using social sustainability metrics, or at least questions, in his work with farmers as he's helping them develop farm business plans. Some time for reflection. And then we got to test the waters. I was able to offer this A Healthy Farm Starts with a Healthy You tent that was embedded at an annual field day that Heather Darby and her team conduct. So we were able to include a licensed massage therapist, some local health, mental health and home health folks. We had a wellness coach, and then we also had some extension programs that work in farm safety there as well. So we were able to get farmers massages during the day, just sort of normalizing that health and wellness is important to running a farm, right? We had our wellness coach give a whole team stretching exercises, the importance of stretching your bodies. And there were like 200 folks at this event, so it was really fun to see people stretching their bodies. We also talked about mental health at a organic dairy conference, and this is blowing bubbles. I think we're talking about bubbles of influence, bubbles of concern. And then the results of all of this work is that we were able to reach almost 100 extension and ag service providers. 89% said they learned something. And then in terms of broader impact, 13 folks said they actually did implement a change in the way that they work with farmers. And through that 3-year period, which is a pretty short time to kind of loop back and see what folks have changed, that they were able to reach 365 farmers during that period. We were also able to bring our lessons learned to National SARE conference. So we joined other folks that has also been thinking about and working on social sustainability topics. So raising more awareness. Our working group applied for AFRI funding. So we had some continued working together. Jason and Shana and Florence actually left the university pretty shortly after, and now they're at Ohio State University doing super great work on these same topics. And so we still hear from them from time to time, which is awesome. And then we've heard that some providers are still integrating social sustainability concepts into their work. So really helping normalize the concepts that social sustainability or social issues are part of the work that we do on farms. And then finally, 2 national publications talk about that trim tab and maybe changing the ship. So Jason and Shoshana and I started working with National SARE on this publication, and the SARE folks were able to finish that publication, so that's available. I put the link there. And then out of that national conference, there was a SARE Quality of Life Working Group that formed, and Amy Guptill, who is a UVM alum and is a professor at one of the SUNYs, I'm sorry, can't remember which one, was able to use her expertise and come up with some indicators that folks can use in their work. So celebrate your trim tab programming, and hopefully you have programming that are sort of changing that big ship. And with that, I think I'm right on time.
Great timing, Deb, and great reflections on work years ago, but continued and sustained even as recently as last weekend, right? Fantastic.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to transition over to Shana for their presentation, and we'll hold Q&A to the end and sort of do it as an integrated Q&A for both presenters.
And can you share, or do I have to take mine off? I don't. Okay, good.
Looks great.
Okay, so can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Shana Haines, and I'm an associate professor in the College of Education and Social Services. I'm calling in today from Waterman, where I am in my office. And you'll also see on here that, well, first of all, my co-presenter is Jessica Strolin-Goltzman, who cannot be here this afternoon with us. So I'm going to try to present on her behalf as well. And you'll see on here that there is a logo that says SHIE, S-H-I-E, and that is a new PhD that I have the privilege of coordinating, which is in social, emotional, behavioral health, and inclusive education. So that's part of my role here at UVM. This is the first semester that we are offering this PhD. It just got approved last fall by the Board of Trustees. So now it's official, and we have our first 5 students enrolled right now. I also teach in the special education program here in the College of Education and Social Services, and the other doctoral program we have, which is in Ed Leadership and Policy Studies, and in a program called Cultural and Linguistic Diversity. Education for Cultural and Linguistic Diversity. So, Deb, I really enjoyed your presentation. I loved all of your beautiful pictures and stories and the personalities that you brought to life. And unfortunately, my presentation is nothing like that. So anyway, I'll do what I can. This is the first one of these that I'm joining. And so I hope that this is appropriate. The talk that I put together is called Cultivating Collaborative and Resiliency-Oriented Practices Among Teachers. And this collaborative and resiliency-oriented practices, you all over in CALS will be happy to know we call that crops. So it's cultivating crops in teachers. And I basically have 3 or 4 slides, I think. What I'm hoping to do today is just kind of do an overview of what we see as a big problem. There are lots of problems in this world, and we're just sort of focusing on one of them. Talk a little bit about our recent but past research, and then the current research and other work that we're doing, and some future research and practice I believe I get into. So the problem, and I don't have a bunch of statistics and I don't have a bunch of publications for this right now because I think it's fairly obvious to most people, but there is a huge problem with teacher attrition, and especially in special education. And there are people are leaving the profession of education, and students are not getting the education that they deserve and that they need and that we as a society need. So this problem is complex. Of course, there's not really an easy solution or really an easy way to define what the problem is or what's causing it. But we do know that the demand for teachers, especially teachers for students who have more high intensity support needs, far exceeds the available supply. And we know that the pandemic exacerbated the problem of teacher attrition because with the shift in modality and the shift in teacher responsibilities and the shift in pedagogy and sort of what was expected from schools, there was this caused a lot of stress and a lot of soul searching potentially of like, what am I doing this for? How is this going? And maybe this isn't for me anymore. So that's one of the reasons for some of the teacher attrition that we saw during the pandemic. However, it's continued and it still continues. And one of the reasons for this is that there has been a decrease in teacher well-being. So coupled with the increase of stress and job demands among teachers, there's also been, it's been harder for teachers to meet all of those needs and to maybe not find quite as much joy in their job as they used to. So this is a very simple way of saying that this is a problem. And so some of the solutions that we've been working on here, and I'll talk pretty briefly about them, but just so you all know, like what we're doing over here in SES around this problem, which affects everybody because, education is hugely important for our society to thrive. And this is a huge issue that cannot live just within our college and doesn't live with just within our college. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all because we don't often have these opportunities to talk about the work that we're engaging in outside of our college, our own, colleagues. So in the past, Jessica and I and a colleague at the University of the Azores, Raquel Dinish, conducted a study that we called Odyssey to the Azores. And this might seem like it's not fully related to this issue of, teacher attrition, but we really do see it as related because in this study, we documented how our students who were undergraduates at the University of Vermont, most of them studying education to be teachers, how the experience of a travel study program in the Azores helped them to develop resiliency, especially related to relationships. So they formed relationships with other students in the class as we were in the Azores on this travel study program together. It's a summer travel study class. And they learned also how to deal with ambiguity. So we have a lot of opportunities in our lives to figure out how we're going to deal with ambiguity. And sometimes it seems like we sort of shy away from it. And sometimes we really lean into it and we let the kind of magic of ambiguity and kind of spontaneity innovation occur, and sometimes we don't. And this is a very tough thing to talk about. I haven't found a lot of research or really ways to articulate it in research terms, but I believe very strongly that this ambiguity and the way we tend to deal with it is an incredibly important part of being a resilient teacher, resilient person in general, but especially in the classroom. And in working in communities and schools, with families, et cetera. So in the Odyssey to the Azores paper, we talk about how we really created these ambiguous situations while we were doing the service learning travel study class in the Azores. And we intentionally created that ambiguity and helped students to navigate it and to reflect on how they navigated it and to recognize that when they leaned into it, great things happened in terms of relationships that they were able to create with other students on the trip and also with the students we were working with in the class that we were working with on the San Miguel Island on the North Shore of San Miguel. So that was one project that we did, and we conducted that study in 2019, the travel study class that ran in 2019, and we published that paper in 2021. So I worked on it. I was a Fulbright scholar in the Azores, and I was able to work on it while I was over there during the spring of 2020, right before COVID hit. So that was one project. And then another one is around crops, the collaborative and resiliency-oriented practices. So the crops articles that I mentioned here, one of them, Jessica, my colleague Jessica Strolin-Goltzman was the lead on, and one I was the lead on. They found two basic things. These were conducted both in the state of Vermont with educators who work across the state. And it was not necessarily a representative sample, but it was a survey that we distributed very widely. And it was anybody who filled out the survey was who participated in the study. And we measured the collaborative and resiliency-oriented practices as the survey measure. What we found was, I had to write down what Jessica found in the article she led on. The professional self-efficacy and relationship-based resiliency factors were associated with a decreased intention to leave the education profession. And notably, this happened during COVID. So during COVID, teachers or any educational professionals who rated their self-efficacy high and also those relationships that they had with others were associated with a decreased intention to leave the profession during a very high stress time. And then similarly, in the study that I led on, we really looked at teachers' relationships with families in particular. And we saw that family partnership was a protective factor that guards against teachers leaving the profession due to stress. So, when we're talking about these collaborative and resiliency-oriented practices, we see that they can actually help teachers stay in the profession and guard against that attrition that is such a big problem. So we've taken that. Those were pretty exploratory. The sampling was not representative, as I said, and the measure that we used was put together to measure, like we kind of put it together thinking it would measure what we hoped it would, but we didn't have the time at that time to do an in-depth study of it. So right now, Jessica is leading a team of scholars, including some of our shy PhD students who are newly enrolled in our program. And they are validating the crops measure with an exploratory factor analysis. So that is work that's currently happening just to make sure that it is measuring what we think it's measuring and to make sure that the constructs are distinct. And then another study that we have ongoing right now is about how teachers perceive the effective family partnership on their own well-being. Because we saw with this initial crop study, we saw that there was that it is a protective factor, but this is sort of teachers on the survey in a quantitative sense reporting what they, how they felt. And that's how we analyzed it. That's what it told us. But now we want to talk to them and do a qualitative study on what do teachers actually perceive the effective family partnership on their well-being. And this has come out of a couple of different interactions that I have had. And one of my areas of research is on family partnership. I have engaged in this research largely because of the role of family partnership that I experienced when I was a teacher, and also from experience that I have as a to families who have come to the US as refugees with refugee backgrounds, and helping them to connect with the school system for their kids. So being on the family side as an advocate with families with refugee backgrounds, and then also as a teacher on the other side. And I just seeing how family partnership has always made me a better teacher who has a higher satisfaction with my teaching and my relationships with my students, but then also seeing that that doesn't always seem to translate into practice, or at least it doesn't seem like it from families' perspectives at times when we're interacting with teachers. Anyway, so this study came out of some discussions I had with some doctoral students about, how did partnering with families make you feel when you were a special educator or when you were a teacher? And tell me a story about a family who you had a great relationship with and what the effect of that relationship was on you. And I heard things just, in sort of trying out these like pilot qualitative interview questions. I heard things from my doctoral students like, I wouldn't have been able to show up to work if it weren't for this family. This knowing that this kid was going to be there in the morning is why I got out of bed in the morning. And a lot of these teachers were people who were teaching during COVID as well. And when they talk about the strength of these positive family relationships, I could see how that would keep them going and keep them engaged and keep their job, as a professionally satisfying and personally satisfying experience. And that really runs counter to a lot of the narrative that we hear, which is that families are pushing teachers to the brink, or that families have such high demands for teachers that they're adding stress to their lives. And so I'm excited about this study that we have ongoing. We just received a small grant from the College of Education and Social Services to conduct this study. So we're able to pay the teachers who participate. And we're going to be interviewing about 25 teachers over the month of January and February about their perceptions of how family partnership affects their well-being. So we'll see how that works out. And then in terms of future work, right now we have a grant from the Office of Special Education Programs. It is a $1.25 million grant that is to fund 26 master's students who will be studying to become special educators, licensed special educators. But in addition to that, they're going to engage in a micro certificate coursework that will lead to a micro certificate in crops. And that's currently pending in our Curricular Affairs Committee. I feel like I need to say that as a disclaimer. But right now we have the paperwork in, and this micro certificate is available to anybody across the university or outside of the university who's interested in it. Right now is a certificate program, and we're hoping to create a micro certificate that's just 9 of the 18 credits that are required for the certificate. The classes focus on resiliency-oriented practices and collaboration. And so these students will receive a master's degree. They will, earn a master's degree. They will earn the micro certificate in crops. And then we're also going to have a communal or collective wellness focus of the grant that will come through in the induction programming. And also we'll have a mentor-teacher alliance. So we'll have students who are working in the field who are doing their student teaching. We have a lot of people who are on provisional licenses, and they will be getting their actual teaching license or special education endorsement if they already have a license, but they will also be able to engage in this induction programming online, joining seminars that we are designing that will happen every other week online. And their mentor teachers who are working with the student teachers will also have a chance to connect and to network, because we know how important those relationships are. And we want to really foster that. We want to appreciate just those connections and that. Yeah, so that is one of the ways that we're moving forward in the future. Another part of that is that we have this communal and collective wellness focus, and we are going to be doing like an annual summer retreat that is going to focus on communal and collective and personal wellness practices. In addition to sort of connecting back to that travel study Odyssey in the Azores paper that I mentioned, we are continuing with our travel study program. And unfortunately, we are not going to the Azores this year, but we are going to Costa Rica. We have a spring break travel study class that's going to the Osa Peninsula to engage in the schools on the Osa Peninsula, right near where the Rubenstein School has their semester abroad. They have connected us with educational partners. And while we're there, we're going to be focusing on these collaborative and resiliency-oriented practices among our students who are with us on the trip, the 16 students who are going. In addition, we have service learning courses where we really seek to engage in that ambiguity and also form relationships in the community and with families. So I just wrapped up 2 service learning courses, both of which had that community focus and getting students who are out there working and engaging in different ways and just seeing like the joy that can come from authentic relationships and authentic experiences that are really geared towards doing things that are mutual goals. So the students are winning from it, and also the people who they're partnered with and their mentors are gaining from these experiences and these students out there. And then we have some international collaboration as well that we are looking into for crops. Specifically, we have a partner in Costa Rica, at the University of Costa Rica, who is really interested in looking at these collaborative and resiliency-oriented practices and how we can ensure that our students who are going to be teachers leave their teacher preparation programs ready to form collaborative relationships. So that's pretty much what I have today. I put my email and Jessica's email, which I realized I just spelled wrong. So it's Jessica Strolin-Goltzman. You can find her at UVM. And my email is right there. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything that they would like to reach out about. Thank you.
Thank you, Shana, so much. Great to hear about the work you're engaged with and where it's headed. Sounds like you've got some amazing things happening and planned for the future. And I'm really thrilled. I mean, not only to have these 2 topics come together through your presentation and Deb's, but also that there was acronym convergence. I mean, that was wonderful. That you've got an acronym in crops, and the alignment with cows was just perfect and unplanned. So thank you. I want to open it up for questions, and feel free to. We have a small group, so feel free to simply unmute if you prefer to raise your hand electronically or in real life. You can do that as well. Like to just make a little space and take a pause to let people transition into Q&A here.
Deb, I have a question for you. So you said that this project that you described happened a while ago, but then there was mention that maybe something happened recently. Like, is it still ongoing?
The project itself is done. It ended in 2016, but it's sort of the gift that keeps on giving. So it was really fun actually to talk to Chris, who participated in, I hope I'm not outing you, Chris, but who said it was just really so inspiring to hear Chris say, well, you know what, I really learned something there and I use it in my work every day. Just amazing. And then that publication, I think it came out either earlier this year or late last year, so that's pretty cool too.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'll out myself. So took part in parts of Deb's project as a learner, as a participant, and I think for one thing, yes, I took skills and tools and perspective out of that. The other observation I would have on this is I feel like it normalized and standardized a conversation and terminology that I see is much more widespread in work with colleagues, even without specific prompting around what are we sustainability. It is simply baked in as part of our work now, and I credit the work you all did, Deb, with making that happen locally here in Vermont. Anybody else have questions? I have an observation, maybe a question, or maybe a point of departure. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is this tension or relationship between risk and our ability to take risk and trust as an asset with which to take risk. And I see parallels in Shana, the terms you were using, I think, were ambiguity and relationships and ambiguity. And so for me, I think oftentimes trust comes from development of relationships. Ambiguity represents risk. And so those two things have a sort of a playful and not so playful tension that I think shows up. And Deb, I see the two dimensions of community connection and entrepreneurship also representing that tension. So I thought I'd bring that up. It's something I've been thinking a lot about in the work I do, and a lot of the organizations I'm involved in which involve adult learners and youth. And it's kind of nice to see it come up in different contexts and in both of your work. And wondering if either of you have thoughts on that.
I do. But I think that my thoughts might be a little bit divergent too. But I did talk a lot about ambiguity, which I was a little surprised about because I didn't really think that was going to be such a big part of my talk. But it's been heavy on my mind since Monday night because on Monday night I wrapped up one of my service learning classes for this semester. And when I wrapped it up, like a lot of faculty, I did what were some of the best parts of the class and what were some of the hardest parts. So whenever we sort of devolve into a discussion on talking about the class, and one of the things that came up for the students was how awkward they felt with our community partner this semester. And I did this on purpose and not on purpose. Sometimes I also felt a little bit awkward or just kind of going along with the flow of things. And our main community partner this semester was the Family Room in Burlington, which does amazing, amazing work. And they have a group of moms called the Super Moms. They're moms of kids with autism. And we were working with them and kind of learning from them and their wisdom, but then also trying to do a service learning project that would help fill a need that they identified in previous work that I had done with them. But when we show up and we're on time, but the group doesn't get going till later and we're just standing there and we're sort of milling about. And, those are sort of like the awkward times when a lot of the time I'm finding, and especially with undergrad students, and I'm finding it more and more, people don't really know what to do with that time. And that is a magical time. It's a magical time of transition and of possibility. But I think a lot of the time, and maybe this is just my soapbox, but I see students just sort of take out their phones and look at their phones. It's not just students, it's society, right? It's what we do a lot of the time. And I had to say not to do that. And I had to say, let's see what happens and let's just be here and do this. And Chris, to your point, it's kind of like trust. I don't know if it's trust a person or just trust in this experience. Let's just be. Let's be here, and sort of maybe it's trust ourselves. Maybe it's a little bit of that self-efficacy piece. Like I'm here, and when I'm here and when I'm present, I can be useful and helpful. And I could just be here and we'll see what happens with it, the spontaneity that comes out of that. So I think that's why I talk so much about the ambiguity. And I appreciate you bringing up trust, because I think that when we have that confidence that like we can do this, whatever it is, we could do it together, we can do it as individuals, or we can trust our partners or whatever it is, then we're a lot more effective. And we're also just going to be a lot happier and a lot more satisfied with the experiences, and a lot more innovation will come from it. I don't know if that really is aligned with what you were thinking, but those are my immediate thoughts.
Thanks for that story. That's wonderful. A great example. Thank you.
Such a cool place too. If anybody has the opportunity to check it out, highly recommend it.
I love, Shana, how you built in ambiguity. I mean, intentionally. I feel like, as you know, our farm community, we're just sort of tossed in, you know, like, oh, there was that May freeze and those July floods. None of us were expecting that. So it's sort of, the ambiguity is sort of baked in. But the trust piece, I think I really enjoyed that you surfaced the importance of relationship, both with peers, as well as parents. And, you know, note to self, make sure you send I wrote down, send a thank you note to our teachers at our high school, because boy, oh boy. But I really like I have my little quotes in the back of my head. So this one that I really like is, you know, moving at the speed of trust. And I think in extension in particular, we're uniquely suited. Like I feel like we've, as educators, spend a lot of time with the trust building, so that we can move in to take action because of that trust. I mean, that's, I mentioned Heather Darby as my supervisor, and that was really helpful in this program, because I could have that health tent, you know, health and wellness tent. Otherwise it'd be like, what the heck, you know? But that she's a trusted professional in her community, sort of leveraging her trust, that capacity. Important to keep in mind. Especially as the university is talking more about this topic of broader impact. I saw some survey that just came out about how to, well, it was a really interesting survey. I don't know if you folks saw it, but it was sort of like how to have, do you want to have broader impact as researchers? The answer hopefully was yes to that question, but then like, how do you, I don't know. It was just really interesting how that conversation is now happening. I feel like this is where the synergy of your work, Shana, and our work is sort of like, that's sort of the first step, right? Taking the broader impact and then working backward. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think having a broader impact, it sounds great, but what does that mean, right? Yeah. Is that at the you know, does trust pay the price? Like, are we having a broader impact and, you know, in breaking bonds, or strengthening them, maybe?
Mm.
Want to give other folks with us in this space a chance to unmute and ask a question, offer an observation. And if not, that's okay too. Great. Shana or Deb, do either of you have final thoughts or questions for each other?
I love, Deb, what you were just talking about how in agriculture you kind of, you know, that ambiguity is kind of part of the game, and you're kind of more it seems like naturally inclined towards the whims of nature. right? But in education, we are as well. Everybody is, but sometimes we don't recognize it, right? And it's just not really made explicit. And so that's where I feel like we need to be intentional about making it explicit and just explaining like that's okay. We don't need to control everything, and we shouldn't control everything, right? We need to go with it sometimes. So I really appreciate that, and thinking about the difference between the different professions that we're in and how we can see the same thing in different ways.
Well said. Well said. Also, I took away from your talk about when you were talking about the awkwardness. It just made me reflect on the lost art of small talk.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a fun project. How to teach small talk. So
right. It almost
important,
does need
right?
to be taught.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And body language, the art of body language to show that you're interested in talking versus the opposite, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. Oh, there's so much. There's so much we could do.
There is. Yeah.
There
And
is,
thank you so
and
much, Chris. Thanks for the invite to join today. Sorry to talk over you.
No, please. Thank you for taking a chance and embracing the ambiguity of Cells to Society seminar. I appreciate you practicing what you're researching. And Deb, thank you as well. Appreciate you going down memory lane and digging up some work that maybe it's been a while, and I think it's still very important, and glad we still have it and use it every day. Maybe there's something here for us to circle back to in a future out of the box brainstorming session and think through some more of these overlaps and where we might find some collaborative benefit. And so look forward to that in maybe the end of January, February timeframe, and we'll put a call out to see if there's some interest. So with that, again, my heartfelt thanks for Shana and Deb for joining us today and presenting their work and their thoughts on their work and each other's work. And thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you. Nice to meet you both.
You as well. Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye.